To order. Pursuant to Standing Order 81-4, main estimates, 2018-19, votes 1 and 5 under the Canada Revenue Agency, votes 1 and 5 under the Department of Finance, vote 1 under Financial Transactions and Reports Analysis Centre of Canada, and vote 1 under Office of Superintendent of Financial Institutions referred to the committee on Monday, April 16, 2018. And so for the first hour, we have Minister Laboutier from Minister of the CRA, plus officials here from the Canada Revenue Agency. And Minister, my apologies. For the moment, we have to deal with a couple of hopefully small items before we start, because we have to get this information to the Budget Liaison Committee by tomorrow. So you have before you the 11th report of the Subcommittee on Agenda and Procedures of the Standing Committee on Finance, and I'll read through that and see if there's any discussion. Your subcommittee met on Monday, April 30th, 2018 to consider the business of the committee and agreed to make the following recommendations. 1. That in relation to the statutory review of the Proceeds of Crime, Money Laundering and Terrorism Financing Act, the committee dedicate additional meetings based on the updated remaining lists of witnesses, and that for one meeting, officials from the Financial Transactions and Reports Analysis Centre of Canada be asked to appear right after consideration of the Order of Council appointment of Nada Seaman. 2. That notwithstanding the motion adopted by the committee on Wednesday, March 28, 2018, concerning the deadline for lists of witnesses for Bill C-74, an act to implement certain provisions of the budget tabled in Parliament on February 27, 2018, and other measures, members of the committee be allowed to provide up to 5 additional names by Tuesday, May 1, 2018. We have those names now. 3. That in relation to the committee's pre-budget consultations in advance of the 2019 budget, the Chair submit to the Subcommittee on Committee Budgets of the Liaison Committee preliminary submissions of travel to Canada, Toronto, Oshawa, Quebec City, St. John, Charlottetown, Winnipeg, Edmonton, Victoria, and Whitehorse, and the United States of America, San Francisco Bay Area, and Silicon Valley, California, Houston, Texas. So submitted. Is there any discussion? Somebody want to move that? Moved by Greg. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. The second item that you have before you is the a request for the budget dealing with Bill C-74, which is the Budget Implementation Act before Parliament, and it relates to witnesses' expenses, Toronto, Victoria, Montreal, video conferences and working meals, and the total requested here is $39,800. Any discussion? Moved by Pierre, or moved Mr. Dussault. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Madam Minister. The floor is yours, and welcome.
Bonjour à tous.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to appear before the Standing Committee on Finance to discuss the main estimates. I would also like to thank the agency's 4 assistant commissioners who are with me today, Ms. Camille Ramcharan, Mr. Ted Gallivan, Mr. Frank Vermeten, and Mr. Jeff Truman. At the Canada Revenue Agency, putting the tools and services into the hands of Canadians so that they can easily file their taxes and receive the benefits to what they are entitled is what drives the work we do. In my mandate as the Minister of National Revenue, I made a commitment to the Prime Minister on behalf of all Canadians to adopt an approach focused on our clients, Canadians. The needs of Canadians and the environment in which the agency operates are constantly changing. That is why the agency must adapt and improve its services on an ongoing basis. This is true for both people who file electronically and for those who file on paper. Regardless of how Canadians choose to interact with the agency, we have made improvements. Allow me to summarize some of the improvements that are already benefiting millions of Canadians. More Canadians are filing their taxes online. This year, more than 90% of the approximately 24 million returns Canadians filed were completed online. My Account, the agency's digital portal, now has more than 7.9 million users. The portal gives Canadians access to their tax and benefit information anytime, any day. Improved digital services such as autofill my return and refile allow Canadians to file or change their income tax and benefit returns online. You may also have noticed you can now access your notice of assessment instantly. In fact, the express notice of assessment is now available in certified tax software and allows Canadians registered for both My Account and online mail to receive and print these notices. The agency is also simplifying its communications, providing Canadians with helpful information depends on the use of simple, easy-to-understand language. In 2017, the agency simplified the language it uses in most of its correspondence to Canadians. These efforts were highlighted in the 25th report of the Clerk of the Privy Council. The report was on service excellence. The agency is now adopting a more modern approach. Responding to the questions of Canadians is paramount, and that is why we have an action plan to improve the quality of services that our call centre agents provide. During the recent tax season, the agency hired additional agents, and over 3,000 of them were able to answer questions from Canadians. In addition, we have increased the number of self-serve options to help callers get the information they need more quickly and easily. These and other new measures, such as improving the training provided to agents and implementing a new telephone platform, will allow callers to have better access to agent queues, which means fewer busy lines. As I mentioned, it is also important to continue meeting the needs of Canadians who use traditional methods to file their taxes. This year, we have made it easier for those who choose to file on paper to do their taxes by mailing approximately 2 million forms and guides directly to them. In addition, people can now make tax payments in person at any of the 6,000 Canada Post outlets. And this new in-person payment service helps people living in remote areas who may not live close to a bank or have easy access to internet services. Another new telephone service launched this year is File My Return. This service helps Canadians with lower fixed incomes whose situation remain unchanged from year to year to file their income tax and benefit return by answering a few questions through an automated phone service. This year, we sent out over 950,000 invitations to Canadians who may be eligible for the new service. Lastly, I would also like to highlight the important work of volunteers from the Community Volunteer Income Tax Program. And the CVITP has been around for quite some time and helps eligible people who have modest incomes and simple tax situations file their returns. Through this program, volunteers help taxpayers prepare their income tax returns. The funding announced in Budget 2018 will allow the program to open more year-round tax preparation clinics, helping more Canadians access the benefits to which they are entitled. To conclude, I would also like to touch on the agency's recent accomplishments to combat tax evasion and aggressive tax avoidance. The agency has taken concrete steps to crack down on tax cheats. It has expanded the scope of its tools for improving its risk assessment systems. It can now assess the risks associated with all multinationals every year. These and other improved systems provide the agency with more relevant information in order to better identify large businesses and individuals who may be participating in aggressive tax avoidance schemes or may not be compliant with tax laws. In addition, with the implementation of country-by-country reporting as of this year, the agency will automatically have access to information from other jurisdictions. As of March 31, 2018, for offshore-related files, audits of over 1,112 taxpayers are underway, and the agency is criminally investigating more than 42 cases of tax evasion. In 2016-2017, the agency's measures resulted in 37 convictions, over 50 years in jail terms, and 10 million in fines imposed by its courts. And I'm pleased to tell the committee that the service improvements benefiting all Canadians will not stop there. Improving the tax services for Canadians is an ongoing process. The agency must ensure that Canadians receive all the benefits to which they are entitled. That is my priority. Budget 2018 announced the implementation of a measure that will automatically register individuals for the Canada Workers Benefit. Thus, I am pleased that approximately 300,000 additional low-income workers will receive the new benefit. In conclusion, improving the services the agency delivers to Canadians will continue to drive our efforts. It will ensure a tax system in Canada that is fair, helpful, and easy to use. Now I'll give the floor to Ms. Ramcharan, who will speak about the main estimates. And I thank you for your attention.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to appear before the committee to present Canada Revenue Agency's main estimates for 2018, 2019, and to answer any questions that you may have on associated funding. As you're aware, the CRA is responsible for the administration of federal and certain provincial and territorial tax programs, as well as the delivery of a number of benefit programs, payment programs. Each year, the agency collects hundreds of billions of dollars of tax revenue for the Government of Canada and distributes timely and accurate benefit payments to millions of Canadians. As the Minister mentioned earlier, in order to fill its mandate in 2018-2019, the CRA is seeking a total of $4.2 billion through these main estimates. Of this amount, $3.3 billion requires approval by Parliament, whereas the remaining $0.9 billion represents statutory forecasts that are already approved under separate legislation. The statutory items includes children's special allowance payments, employee benefit plan costs, and pursuant to Section 60 of the Canada Revenue Agency Act, the spending of revenues received for activities administered on behalf of the provinces and other government departments. These 2018-2019 main estimates represents a net increase of $41.8 million or 1% when compared to the 2017-2018 main estimates authorities. The largest component of this change is an increase of $89.8 million to implement and administer various measures to crack down on tax evasion and combat tax avoidance. This represents the incremental 2018-2019 funding for measures announced in Budget 2016 and Budget 2017. The majority of these resources will fund the new GST, HST measures aimed at preventing tax evasion and improving tax compliance, the expansion of existing compliance and verification measures, and the expansion of business intelligence activities and improved strategies that promote enhanced compliance. The CRA is currently on track to meet the incremental revenue-generating commitments associated with these measures. Other increases to the agency's budgets include $11.8 million to support the introduction of a new tax regime related to the legalization of cannabis, including adjustments to our systems. The funding will also be used to start processing early license applications so that cultivators and manufacturers are authorized to provide legal cannabis on the implementation date. These increases are partially offset by a reduction, a $21.5 million reduction in statutory contributions to employee benefit plans and in the forecast of cost recovery revenues pursuant to Section 60 of the CRA Act for initiatives administered on behalf of provinces and other government departments. A $17.1 million adjustment associated with changes in the funding profile for the various measures announced in previous federal budgets. A $16.2 million adjustment related to accommodation and real property services provided by Public Services and Procurement Canada. And finally, a $5 million reduction in forecasted payments under the Children's Special Allowance Act. It should be noted that CRA's 2018-2019 main estimates do not reflect incremental resources for the announcements made by the Minister of Finance in the February 2018 budget. The funding required for the implementation and administration of these measures is currently being evaluated and will be presented to Treasury Board ministers through formal submissions in the coming months. In closing, the resources being requested through these estimates will allow the CRA to continue to deliver on its mandate to Canadians by making it easier for the vast majority of taxpayers who want to pay their taxes and more difficult for the small minority who do not, and by ensuring Canadians have ready access to the information they need about taxes and benefits. Mr. Chair, at this time, we'd be pleased to respond to any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ramcharan. So we'll go to 5-minute rounds. That way I think we can get everybody on, starting with Ms. O'Connell.
Mr. Chair, thank you all for being here. Minister, I wanted to ask in regards to the tax avoidant evasion measures that are being taken. A large part of the main estimate increase is in relation to that. So I'm just wondering if you can provide some more details on the focus. And you mentioned some of the statistics and the good news in terms of the work that the CRA is doing. But can you maybe elaborate on what the main estimate increase on tax avoidance and evasion and what that is going to look like moving forward?
Je remercie ma collègue pour sa question.
I'd like to thank my colleague for her question. First of all, we are the government who decided to invest in avoiding tax evasion and avoidance, in fighting it, rather. Budgets allocated in 2016-17 and 17-18, almost $2 billion have been committed to fight tax evasion and avoidance. What we have done over the past 2 years through our budgets is to work on establishing a structure that will make it possible for us to fight tax avoidance and evasion. At present, we already have hired auditors, and the agency can assess 100% every single major multinational. I'd also like to thank the committee who recommended that the voluntary disclosure program rules be tightened, and that has begun. Thank you for your recommendations. We have also targeted 4 countries per year. We are working with the OECD and have signed over 60 agreements on disclosure, country-by-country disclosure.
I want to also ask, Minister, in previous appearances early on in your mandate, one of the things you spoke to this committee about was your commitment to improving the customer service, so to speak, to Canadians when dealing with CRA. And I know there's been a lot of investments and you've made a lot of key decisions. Ms. Ramcharan spoke about some of the main estimates and making things easier for Canadians. Can you speak to, since you started your mandate and that focus on customer service, can you talk about some of the improvements that have been made to provide Canadians better access and quality responses to when they contact the CRA?
Je vous remercie.
Thank you for your question. In my mandate letter, client service was indeed a priority for our government. In the 2018 budget, we have funding that will enable us to make significant improvements. We are investing over $200 million in the agency's services. We have brought in improvements, significant improvements to the volunteer program. I've had the opportunity of doing the rounds of CRA offices, and at each location I visited, I made it my duty to meet volunteers. Volunteers pointed out that over the years, they had been left rather to themselves with little support. And that has certainly become a priority for me. We know that volunteers work with the most vulnerable people in our society, so we'll continue working on this. We have taken account of what volunteers told us across the country. With these new investments, we're working on modernizing our digital services, and we will also strengthen our telephone services. We have restored postal service for those who are seniors, for example, people in the regions who have no access to the internet. So that is something that's been appreciated. These have been very significant measures for us. I've considered it a priority to invest in services, unlike the former government, which cut services.
Kelly. Pat?
How much money will the CRA receive under Treasury Board Central Vote 40? To the Minister, please.
So right now, yeah.
More at Mr. Ramsharan.
Yeah, so what I'd like to say is approximately $80 million Central Vote 40, which is related to the budget 2018 for this year.
Okay, thank you. So given the, until we see the final wording of the bill that is voted on, there's uncertainty around whether or not those funds are legally bound to how they are spelled out in the annex to the budget. For example, can you commit, Minister, today that the 33.5 or 33.3 million allocated to fix the call center debacle will in fact be used for that purpose? To the Minister,
to go.
Minister? Oh, sorry.
Ms. Ramsharan?
Sure. What I can say with regards to that, we can't commit exactly to the numbers that have been provided for you in that centralized vote. What we need to be able to do is develop our Treasury Board submissions to be able to justify the dollar amounts that we're seeking. So in order to do that, we will have the opportunity to make a case to access those funds.
So at present, is there any, what do the plans to fix the call center system consist of at this point, since they were not in the mains and in this this money that we don't know whether even it will be legally bound to the department?
I'd be happy to set out what our plans are to improve the call centers, and I will say the improvement is already happening, and it's happening, I'd say, quite rapidly. So I think the first thing, of course, is to hire more call agents, and that process has begun, and that's been extremely helpful.
So there's no plan that's ready to go to Treasury Board, that this is still draft and being considered at this point, Minister?
What I can say about the call center is, as I said earlier, we are the government that has invested in call centers. I did the rounds of Canada, visiting CRA offices across the country, met with employees. I've done that over the past 2 years, and I can tell you that when the Auditor General came to CRA and submitted his report, I wasn't at all surprised about what was happening. Employees had already told me about how outdated things were. No investments had been made under the former government, the Tory government. So they needed a telephone system that would meet client service needs, that they needed training for employees, and by doing that, we will be able to establish criteria that will align with the quality services that Canadians expect from CRA.
To go to Treasury Board and execute.
Le plan a été proposé au...
The plan has been proposed to the Auditor General. That was done when he submitted the report, his report. We are working on establishing a call system that should be in place for 2018-19. We have hired employees and they will be given training.
CBC earlier this week reporting on the disproportionate number of audits taking place to residents of the North. You mentioned in your opening remarks the difficulties faced with tax compliance for Northern residents. You said, listen, I can tell you I'll get you those statistics, and I commit that I'll be getting them to you. You said that in response to a question about the number of those affected by these audits in the North. Do you have those statistics today?
Our government is determined to respect and renew our relationship with the Indigenous people, which is the most important relationship we have. It's also very important that people in the North receive the credits they're entitled to. I have met with Indigenous peoples in the North, and we have adapted our communications products for the North. We are working in partnership with Service Canada. We have visited over 688 Indigenous communities across Canada in order to share information on benefits. I have asked a CRA for more information on what I have been asked to deliver by people in the North. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here today, Minister. My first question, I'd like to come back to what you said in answer to the question on call centers. You said that you were aware of the problem. Could you say, in that case, why in the departmental performance reports the figures were not the right ones, since you were aware of the problems? You said you were aware, but the DPR indicated that everything was just fine. Could you please tell us why that discrepancy happened? I don't understand what you're getting at with your question. The Auditor General said, and you said, that the figures published by the CRA saying that the call centers were working well were not congruent with what was actually happening. 30% of the information people were getting when they called in wasn't right. And that discrepancy was not reflected in the DPR. As I said, when the Auditor General tabled his report, I was not surprised by the recommendations. When I met the Auditor General, we already had an action plan. We'd been working on it, a plan to modernize call services, provide employees with training, and meet the expectations that Canadians rightly have for our agency. As for the technical details, I would ask my colleague to answer. No, that's a satisfactory reply. That's fine. I'd like to move on to something else. I have only 5 minutes. Could you please remind me of the numbers you quoted, the number of sentences over the last year? Yes, I'll be very happy to give them for you to give them to you. In 2016-17, we had 37 sentences, over 50 years of jail time, and 10 million imposed in fines by the courts. And these are penalties associated with tax evasion. Abroad, tax evasion. Not abroad, well, tax evasion generally. For more technical details on what tax evasion means, my colleague can answer. No, I know what it means. I'm just trying to understand, because when you mentioned these figures in your opening remarks, you were talking about fighting tax avoidance abroad and tax evasion abroad, and you talked about 37 sentences, 50 years, and 10 million. So if we take the 78. You said there have been 78 sentences. So does that include sentences relating to tax avoidance and evasion abroad? These figures come from a good journalist, and we noticed that of these 78, a respectable journalist, Ms. Thompson, said that none of these 78 sentences were in fact related to incidents abroad, tax evasion and avoidance abroad. So why are you giving us so many figures that in fact are misleading Canadians? When I talk about when I ask about tax evasion and avoidance abroad, this is the figure you're giving me. We are the government who have invested the most in fighting tax evasion. So it would be good if you had more information rather than saying things somewhat randomly. I'm going to ask Mr. Gallivan to explain what tax avoidance and tax evasion mean. Could you please tell us what was random in my statement? Mr. Gallivan will answer. We will give you the details. I would say that sometimes confusion comes from the fact that the prosecutions that were beginning or initiating take 4 or 5 years to come to the point of sentences. So the agency has decided to focus abroad. There are 42 cases that are open at the moment, but cases that were closed recently were initiated in 2011 or 12. So it's a timing issue. Well, I think the confusion flows primarily from the minister's answers. When we talk about tax evasion abroad and ask about it, she talks about said the 78 sentences, and yet it's much less than that. These figures are making no sense.
What the minister said in her remarks, Mr. Dussault, that there was 2016, 2017 related to offshore-related files. There was 37 convictions, 50 years in jail terms, 10 million in fines. As of March 2018, there is still 42 cases being criminally investigated. Am I correct in those figures? So we're dealing with the same figures? Mr. Gallivan?
Effectivement.
That is correct.
Or offshore, that's what you said.
The 37 convictions offshore, and there's 42 cases being criminally investigated on top of that are offshore.
But she said the 37 are not offshore. She said it's only tax evasion.
Okay, clear this up.
So can I?
Yeah, clear it
Mr.
up,
Chair?
Mr. Gallivan.
Yeah. The 37 for the prior year weren't 100% related to offshore. It was a mixture because those are files that were started many years in the past. The number 42 is our current number of offshore-related criminal investigations that are open today. Those files will take many years to close, and so when we report results in 2022, 2023, you'll see the ratio of offshore to domestic to be much higher.
So you can't tell us of the 37 how much are offshore and how much aren't? That data isn't available?
The majority would have been domestic.
Okay. All right, Mr. Cervera.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome, Minister. Bienvenue. Just before I get into the one or two questions I'd like to ask as Minister, I'd like to congratulate yourself and the other ministers in trade and finance and your work together. Yesterday, we received some really good news on our economy, and it lends well to national revenue, CRA, and how we operate and how we attract foreign direct investment. We moved up 3 spots in the A.T. Kearney report that came out of ranking countries worldwide in terms of foreign direct investment. We are number 2 behind the United States, but ahead of many other countries, including Germany and the United Kingdom and Italy and so forth. So great work by yourself and the ministers around that table. It's great to see Canada deserving the recognition that it deserves in terms of the work that our government has done over these last 3 years. I'd like to commend your department in terms of making it easy for Canadians to file online, and also for the CV tip program in terms of I think it's the CV tip program, in bringing in local tax preparers into offices across the country. It's been a great program for my constituents, and many have taken advantage of it. I think we've done about 100 tax filings for low-income Canadian seniors and so forth. My question, I'd like to, if I may ask it in French, it concerns tax evasion and aggressive tax avoidance. Comment les investissements effectués?
How will the investments made over the past 3 years help CRA better target aggressive tax avoidance and tax evasion? Thank you to my colleague for the question. In the past 3 budgets, the funding has enabled us to establish a structure that will help us avoid tax avoidance, tax evasion, and aggressive tax avoidance. Jean-Pierre Blackburn, a former Minister of National Revenue, even said publicly that it wasn't a priority of the Conservative government fighting tax evasion and aggressive tax avoidance. I've had an opportunity to meet with our OECD partners in Paris in the course of this last winter. The OECD shared the exceptional work conducted by the agency. They were very happy with what we'd done. Canada will be hosting the second OECD meeting on major corporations.
Comment le Canada a-t-il joué un rôle de leadership?
How has Canada played an international leadership role to ensure multinationals' compliance? I will ask Mr. Gallivan to answer that question.
Canada leads the large business network, or the OECD, 2 areas where we've expressed that leadership. First, the country-by-country reports, which is an automatic exchange of information of the global activities of multinationals that are going to be shared with countries around the world. Canada coordinated the work of the OECD to provide guidance on the effective and appropriate use of that information. So a major global initiative affecting the taxation of multinationals, and Canada was holding the pen on the procedures for how to use that information. Second is the risk assessment of multinationals. As the Minister mentioned, one of the key controls we have is we're able to risk assess the 1,200 multinationals operating in Canada every single year. We spend 400 hours. We have a very sophisticated IT system, which some of the new funding is helping us enhance. And we're basically helping the world kind of understand that and see how to risk assess multinationals and decide which need a deeper dive from the audit function.
Cool. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you both. Mr. Kelly.
Minister, have you completed the review of all of the disability tax credit applications that were declined in 2017 after the May, in particular after the May 2nd letter change?
Je remercie mon collègue.
I'd like to thank my colleague for that question. What I can say, first of all, I know full well that living with a disability is something that is complex, both for the disabled person and for the family. I'd like to add that the legislation has not changed. It is exactly the same. With regard to the reviews that we're doing, it's almost at an end. At the next meeting of the committee, which has been established, a committee, in fact, that you abolished in 2006. At the next meeting of the committee, we'll give them the figures. After that, it'll be a pleasure to give them to you.
When is the meeting scheduled?
La prochaine rencontre du comité.
The next meeting of the committee will be on May 28th.
to the May 28th meeting?
Les premières personnes à qui
The first people to whom we'll submit the information will be the committee, and after that we will be able to provide it to you. We are doing that out of respect to the committee, which considers it very important to bring its information up to date and give us recommendations.
The look back on this episode, have you determined how many people were compelled to collapse their disability tax savings plans as a result of being rejected for the disability tax credit?
I'd be happy to answer that. The way the RDSP program works is that it allows for the possibility that an individual who was initially eligible for the DTC and then becomes ineligible, it allows for some time for the opportunity for those cases to be reviewed, for the individual to resubmit the DTC application, or for the individual, in fact, to launch an objection and even an appeal. So the wind down of that RDSP doesn't happen right away. They have essentially at least a year to wind that down if necessary. So to the extent that any cases that we reviewed were then subsequently reversed, those individuals would be able to maintain their RDSP.
Will your review of those that were declined reveal that, and will we be able to have that information as well, and have those affected had that communicated to them adequately?
When we do the review, and whether it's a review, whether it is a decision that's overturned, the individual is notified that they're now eligible for the DTC. So it's made very clear. I think you'll, and I can look into the issue about whether there be actually statistics about whether anybody would wind down the RDSP.
Okay. One of the items in Treasury Board Vote 40 is earmarked for, assuming that the bill will make that legally binding, $3.8 million for the CRA to address problems with Phoenix. How much of that will go to correcting T4s? Minister?
Those funds would be available for the agency to help them process the T4s. In terms of the actual issuance of the original or the amended T4s, that's a responsibility of PSPC rather than ourselves.
Okay, Minister, what do you know? How much confidence do you have that that will be sufficient to correct the problem with T4s created by the Phoenix debacle?
Can take that. I'd be happy to take that. We've been working very closely with our partners at PSPC in order to anticipate the release of amended T4s and to be in a position where we can process those as quickly as we can so that affected public servants have an accurate tax determination at the earliest possible date.
Minister, from a meeting that we had on March 26th with your officials, we talked about the difference between taxes found through audit and those recovered. Do we have an update on that and the $560 million tax finding that was reported at that meeting?
Ce que je peux vous dire, c'est parce que
You're asking a question on Phoenix, and what I can say is
on taxes found through audit, stemming from an answer that Mr. Gallivan gave, and I think you, Mr. Gallivan, recall the question that I had, and I wondered if the minister could tell us whether the amount reported, $560 million found, has been recovered, and if not, whether or not, how much of that we expect would be recovered.
Yeah, again, back to that prior response, the agency, it just is not possible or practical across the large number of audits we do to individually track how much these taxpayers are paying. They have multiple debts, they make multiple payments across multiple tax years. I think we agree that it would be helpful for transparency to have a general percentage, and the work to produce a general percentage to show how much through litigation is conceded to the taxpayer and how much goes uncollected is underway. I would say, though, that the numbers continue to go up. And so from an apples-to-apples comparison, if you go back 5 or 6 years when the audit function was identifying $9 billion in fiscal impact, and now we're up at 12.8%, on an apples-to-apples basis, we're seeing a positive movement. But back to your point, the work's underway.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you all. Mr. McLeod.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to the Minister for coming here today. I was very happy to see you come to the Northwest Territories, Minister, and also very happy to see that you were able to visit Nunavut, because we share a lot of our concerns across the board. And during our time with you in Northwest Territories, we heard lots about tax issues, and reassessment was one of the things that came up a couple times, and it's something that's been brought to my attention over the last while also. And again, this year, as we hit tax time, the issue of reassessment is starting to surface, because the reassessment process takes time. It takes several months to go through, and usually, if you're expecting a tax return and you get notice of reassessment, you're not going to get a refund if you were supposed to get one. And it creates a lot of hardship to the low-income families. Now, we know in the North we are above the average. The average across the country, the national rate is at 4.6%. We are almost triple of that, the amounts of reassessment that are happening in the North. Some people have been reassessed 10 times out of 10 years. And so we're really happy that the Taxpayers Ombudsman had decided to do some preliminary research on this issue, on the Northern Residency reassessments. And her office had not yet launched a systemic examination of this issue. But they have said they're satisfied with what they've done so far. Could you maybe tell me what the actions were that has been undertaken by CRA that has led to the Ombudsman been able to say that she's satisfied with what she's seen so far?
Je vous remercie. Je vous remercie pour...
Thank you for your question. I have traveled to Yukon, to the Northwest Territories. I also went to Nunavut to meet people, and I can't give you statistics off the top of my head, but I did ask the agency to give me more information on this, because it was a concern for all the people I met on my travels. I even announced it myself publicly on CBC. I said that I was taking account of what people were saying, and that we would seek to get more information and more detail from the department.
I was glad that you acknowledged during your trip to the North that there's still a lot of work to be done to address the issue of over-frequent reassessments. Could you tell us what you're going to do going forward? What is the agency's plan to ensure that Northerners are not overly reassessed? Is there a plan to address this issue?
Yeah. So look, from a compliance perspective, what the agencies, what the ministers ask the agency to do increasingly is match our compliance response or our intervention to the issue. And where possible, we need to be leading with education, with rules clarifications, maybe suggestions to the Department of Finance, and then follow up with a lighter touch around substantiation, clarification, maybe prospective treatment. And then kind of in the space that I'm accountable for, multinationals and aggressive tax planning, that's where we go in with the auditors and a 10-year audit and discretionary penalties. And so I think what we're trying to find in this instance and others is the right mix of education, information, possibly legislative clarification, because this isn't aggressive tax planning. These are people who are, trying to access the benefits they're entitled to. So what the minister has asked us to do as a philosophy is review our compliance actions and choose the right intervention for the right behavior.
There, Mr. Albas.
Mr. Chair, Minister, thank you for your presence, for you and your officials' work for our country. We've had some discussions in the House, Minister, in regards to the Canada Child Benefit. I note that in your presentation to this committee, you said the agency must ensure Canadians receive the benefits to which they are entitled. That is my priority. Minister, I'm happy to hear you say that. As you know, I've worked on many cases where I see a pattern where all too often a parent, typically the father, abandons their relationship and children, provides no forwarding address in large part because they're also looking to avoid making child support payments. And so they don't want to be found. Now, these types of parents do not change their address. So they still show up as living with their former spouse. Now, in many cases, CRA will then come along and basically say, your spouse is still showing as living at your address. We're cutting off or even clawing back the benefits until you can prove otherwise. In other words, they are guilty unless, in the eyes of CRA, until they prove themselves innocent. Now, Minister, do you think that this is really a fair way to treat vulnerable single mothers? Because it's mainly single mothers that I've seen this issue happen
Je vous remercie.
Thank you for your question. Since I have myself been a single mother, I know full well how single mothers feel in the situations in which they find themselves. It is very important that people receive the services they're entitled to. I would invite my colleague, if there are any specific cases, please forward the information to my office, and I will make sure the rules are complied with.
The constituent, and her concern was heard, but I've sent your office a number of other cases, and we have heard absolutely nothing since that first case was resolved. In fact, I want to go back to it. When it comes to taking on a single mother, CRA has all of the power here. They can garnish wages, they can seize a bank account, they can even seize their assets. Now, given that CRA has all this power, wouldn't it be a more fair approach to not claw back a mother's child benefits until such a time CRA can irrefutably establish that there's fraud, as opposed to the current situation where something as trivial as a former spouse not changing their address can result in serious financial harm? Minister, one of the ladies that I sent to you claims that she lost her home because she did not have the balance or the benefit of the Canada Child Benefit. This is a serious case, and I'd like to hear you say that the process is not fair and can be made fair. In fact, you say in your comments that, in conclusion, the services the agency delivers to Canadians will drive our efforts. It will ensure a tax system that is fair, helpful, and easy to use. Minister, it is not fair, helpful, or easy to use the current system.
Je veux spécifier à mon collègue.
In a former life, I was a social worker. I have always worked for people who are vulnerable and people who needed the services they were entitled to. As Minister of National Revenue, I can tell you that those who are most in need, I will be there for them. I repeat, if you have specific cases, I would very much like you to forward them to us, because I want people to get the benefits they need.
I personally feel this very strongly about this, but Minister, it is a demeaning process where I've been told that someone would have to approach the principal of the school that they had just enrolled in and to get the principal to sign a letter saying that they were no longer, that spouse was no longer living in that home. Minister, it's a demeaning process for someone to go to a complete stranger and ask for them to write a letter outlining who's living with them, who's sharing a bedroom with them. Minister, do you not agree that that process is demeaning and can seem very, very loathsome to a woman who's trying to get the benefits she needs for her children?
Je demandais à M. Vermaten qui vous explique réellement.
I will ask Mr. Vermerton to explain the process.
I think we have a large and dedicated staff, and they have an important job to try to make sure that people get the benefits they are entitled to. In some cases, we do these reviews, and in some cases, people will get more, and some people will get less. And determining eligibility is really important, particularly when there are life changes. I think our agents try to approach these issues with an increasing amount of sensitivity to the circumstances of the individual, and I think we've worked hard under the direction of the government to try to take special circumstances into account. So, for example, we're accepting a larger variety of documents to prove residency, to prove who is a mother who lives there. So we're taking a
to say who they share a room with, I think, is very demeaning. So perhaps the agency, Mr. Chair, should review those documents to see whether or not it is maintaining the dignity of the women that are applying for those benefits, and that, again, there should be a process in place where they are not considered guilty until they can prove otherwise.
We're going to have to end it there. I think the point has been made to officials that maybe this should be looked at a little more closely. I've had cases myself the same, to be honest with you. Before I go to Ms. Shanahan for the last question, I did have one, and that relates to the excise stamp. We hear some complaints from the tobacco industry, etc., that there may be counterfeits or stolen ones, whatever. But when I started to look into this, I found out that the excise stamp was supposed to expire on March 31st, 2018. It's now been extended to September 30th, 2019. And my question really is, on the excise going forward, will there be an open request for proposals that other companies may be able to apply to put in that technology, and how soon will that happen? Because September 2019, September 30th is not far away. Mr. Truman?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So you're correct, that contract has been extended. I believe there are also 2 6-month extension periods possible with that contract, but following that there would be a request for proposal, and that tobacco excise stamp contract that you refer to will also allow us to produce the cannabis excise stamps as well. So it was important to get that in place to be ready for that regime as well.
With the way technology is rapidly changing, is that going to give enough time? Anyway, I'll not get into it. Ms. Shanahan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. C'était vraiment un plaisir pour moi d'être ici.
It was really a pleasure for me to be here today. I don't always have the opportunity to be here with this committee, so I'm delighted to have an opportunity to ask the Minister some questions. I was also a social worker, but before that, I was a banker. I worked in an accounting office. I remember that between 2002 and 2006, we had excellent services from Revenue Canada. We had questions, we got answers. In Quebec, we can always compare Revenue Quebec and Revenue Canada, and it was certain that the services from Revenue Canada were great. I left in 2006 and became a social worker. A few years later, chatting with my colleagues in an accounting office, I heard that things had flipped around completely, and that CRA no longer had the means to answer the questions put by professionals and individuals, while Revenue Quebec had improved its services tremendously. So when I see the Auditor's General report, my colleagues will be aware that the Auditor General always looks at the entire period covered by the report. So when we see the results given for Revenue Canada's call centre, we see that the data were collected between 2012 and 2017. So I fully agree that there were problems with the call centre. We know that positions had been cut. I'd heard about those. And the fact that you're working hard now to redress the situation, yes. But is there a lag? This is expert knowledge that people need in order to answer taxpayers' questions. I'd like to thank my colleague for her question. I wasn't, as I said, at all surprised by the Auditor General's report. We have made significant changes at CRA to improve services and to help employees develop skills on much more specific topics. In 2016, we set up what we called a service renewal. So changes were made at CRA. We centralized services, specialized services in a series of offices. It's going to be much easier for people to get the right information instead of ending up speaking to people who have only general knowledge. People work very hard at the agency. I need to congratulate them on their service renewal initiative because it required cooperation by the agency's 40,000 employees. They've done tremendous work since 2016. Perhaps Mr. Vermeten can add some details to what I've just said.
The investments the government has made in the telephone system has really allowed significant improvement, both in the budget 2016, I think that stabilized the funding, and then the budget 2018. And so what we see when you look at what's in the OAG report is, a reflection of some difficult times. As we move here, more call agents have been hired. There's additional training now, which we call nesting and gating, which allows additional support after the initial training. There's been investments now being made in new technology. When you put all that together, I think you're going to see a rapid improvement in the call centers, and we're seeing that right now. When you look at the filing season that we just had, our accessibility has never been higher. It has gone up for the individual lines. It has gone up significantly compared to when you look at the 2014, 15, 2015, 16. Gradually, every year we've had improvements, and you really see that coming through right now.
We're gonna have to end it there, folks. Thank you, Minister. Thank you, officials, for your coming before the committee and answering our questions. With that, I see the Minister of Finance and Deputy are in the wings. We'll suspend for a minute and change up the deck, I guess. Suspended. With us is the Minister of Finance, Mr. Marneau, and the Deputy Minister, Mr. Rochon. And I will say in beginning, I know on this round we have a hard stop at 6:15, so we do have to be done at 6:15 sharp. Mr. Minister, the floor is yours.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Avant d'aborder...
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before going into the issue of the Budget Implementation Act, I would like to thank all members of the Standing Committee on Finance for their excellent work and for their very great diligence. I'm happy to be here today to speak on the most recent budget tabled by our government and to answer any questions that members of this committee might have.
House of Commons back at the end of February, it reflected a record of achievement for Canadians. Since November of 2015, more than 600,000 new jobs have been created for Canadians, most of them full-time. The unemployment rate is at the lowest level we've seen in more than 40 years in this country. And if you compare Canada to its economic peers, the other G7 nations, we're leading the pack when it comes to economic growth since 2016. With Budget 2018, we're building on a plan that respects the choice that Canadians made a little over 2 years ago, a confident and ambitious approach to growing our economy. À l'heure actuelle, la solidité des facteurs.
At present, the stability of fundamental factors of our economy makes it possible for us to invest in areas that will keep our economy stable and growing in the long term, such things as infrastructure, science and research, as well as skills and training. At the same time, we have a duty to seriously examine the problems that are still hindering our population and economy from moving forward.
2018 reflect our government's continuing commitment to strengthening and growing the middle class and our commitment to doing so in a fiscally responsible way. There are important measures from the 2018 budget contained in the BIA, and I'd like to take a few minutes to describe a few of them. The first is the new Canada Workers Benefit. We know that the future success of Canadians, and indeed the future success of our economy as a whole, rests on giving more people more opportunities to work and to earn a good living from that work. As a strengthened, more accessible, and more generous replacement for the working income tax benefit, the Canada Workers Benefit will allow low-income workers to take home more money while they work, encouraging more people to join and stay in the workforce and offering real help to more than 2 million Canadians who are working hard to join the middle class. To give you a sense of what this will mean for Canadians, a low-income worker earning $15,000 could receive nearly $500 more from the Canada Workers Benefit in 2019 than they would have under the previous working income tax benefit. Notre gouvernement va aussi faire en sorte qu'il sera plus facile pour les...
It will also be easier for workers to obtain their credits to which they're entitled. We're suggesting amendments to make it possible for CRA to automatically determine whether people are eligible for the new allocation by making it more generous and by paying it automatically to all those who are entitled to receive it. We will be lifting some 68,000 Canadians out of poverty this year.
New annual funding starting in 2019 to help low-income workers to get ahead and to stay ahead. Also included in the Budget Implementation Act are changes to better support Canada's seniors, because we believe, as we know Canadians do, that every Canadian deserves a secure and dignified retirement. In June 2016, the government reached an historic agreement with provinces to enhance the Canada Pension Plan. The CPP enhancement, which will begin to be phased in next January, will mean more money for Canadians when they retire so they can worry less about their financial situation and focus more on enjoying their retirement. With the action taken by Quebec to enhance the Quebec pension plan in a similar fashion, all Canadian workers can now look forward to a safer and more secure retirement. The Budget Implementation Act includes the additional CPP benefit increases that were agreed to with the provinces last December. A unanimous consensus was reached to further strengthen the CPP to provide greater benefits to parents whose income drops after the birth or adoption of their child, to persons with disabilities, to spouses who are widowed at a young age, and to the estates of low-income contributors. These changes will be put in place without raising CPP contribution rates. This year's budget, and consequently the current BIA, is also heavily focused on helping Canadian women and Canadian families to succeed. As you may know, women's participation in the workforce in Canada is the highest among G7 countries, but it's still nearly 10 percentage points below the rate for Canadian men, even though Canadian women are among the best educated in the world. The gender wage gap is also an issue in Canada, as it is in many other places. In 2017, for every dollar per hour a male worker in Canada earned, a female worker earned 88 cents. Les Canadiennes sont sous-représentées dans les postes de direction et dans les domaines.
Canadians are overrepresented in STEM positions. We know that poorly paid jobs like childcare or looking after older family members are tasks that are disproportionately taken on by women, and thus they might have difficulty in seizing job opportunities. In the 2018 budget, we therefore announced a new parental allocation, a shared employment allocation to encourage both partners of two-parent families to share childcare equally.
Budget Implementation Act, but I'd be happy to answer any questions about it that you may have. We're also taking steps to further help Canadian families through a strengthened Canada Child Benefit. Compared to the old system of Canada of child benefits, the CCB gives low and middle-income parents more money each month, tax-free, to help with the high cost of raising their children. It's simpler, more generous, and better targeted to help more families who need it most. Thanks to the CCB, 9 out of 10 Canadian families now have extra help each and every month to pay for things like healthy food, music lessons, or kids' activities, or whatever their family wants. In dollar terms, families that receive the CCB will get on average about $6,800 this year. Across the country, I've heard, and I'm sure many other people in this room have heard, that this income is making a real difference for families. And it's making a real difference for children, too. Since its introduction in 2016, the CCB has helped to lift 300,000 Canadian children out of poverty. The Budget Implementation Act strengthens the Canada Child Benefit by indexing its benefits to the cost of living starting this July. And I should note that this is fully 2 years ahead of the previous schedule. It's because our economy is strong and growing, and because of our government's stronger fiscal position, that we're able to offer this extra help to families now. Enfin, Monsieur le Président, j'aimerais dire quelques mots.
In conclusion, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to say a few words on our government's commitment to give more support to small businesses that support the economy.
Across this country. Small businesses account for about 7 out of 10 jobs in the private sector. We know that low and competitive tax rates allow Canada's entrepreneurs to invest in their businesses and create even more good, well-paying jobs. That's why we cut the small business tax rate to 10% effective this past January, with a plan to lower it again to 9% effective January 1st, 2019. By this time next year, the combined federal, provincial, territorial average income tax rate for small business will be 12.2%, the lowest in the G7 countries and the third lowest among members of the OECD. For the average small business, this will mean an extra $1,600 per year to reinvest in new equipment, new products, new jobs. There's one last thing I'd like to mention, because I know it's of great interest to this committee, and that's the terminology used by credit unions. The Budget Implementation Act would provide prudentially regulated deposit-taking institutions, such as credit unions, with the ability to use generic bank terms under the Bank Act, subject to disclosure requirements. So, Mr. Chair, the measures contained in the Budget Implementation Act represent the next step in the government's plan to put people first, to deliver the help they need now, while investing in the things that will deliver growth for the long term. So thank you again for having me here with all of you today, and I'll be happy to answer questions from members of the committee, either on Budget 2018 or on other measures as you wish. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister, and I would be remiss too if I didn't thank you and the Deputy for the number of officials who have been trooping before this committee as we go through the Budget Implementation Act, and I want to thank them for sometimes sitting and waiting while we continue our work. So, 5-minute rounds, Mr. Fergus.
Oh, merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Puis j'aimerais aussi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would also like to thank the Minister of Finance and congratulate him on a budget that was well designed and extremely well received by taxpayers in my riding, certainly, Hull Aylmer. I can say that the most significant measures, what marks a good budget, is how we treat those less fortunate than ourselves. I think there are two measures that I'd like to highlight in particular, and I'd like your views on them. The Canada Child Benefit is one, and the Canada Workers Benefit is the other, which replaces a previous tax credit. I think those two measures are going to make a great deal of difference to people who work extremely hard to put food on the table. So I'd like your comments, since it's somewhat unusual for a Minister of Finance to actually look after those less fortunate. Thank you. That's a good question. In my view, it's very important to see how we can have more impact on the economy now and in the long term. And that's something we cannot do unless Canadians are working and doing good things both for their families and for the economy. That is why we believe it's extremely important to have a Canada Workers Benefit, because that is a measure that will help people who are working to have more opportunity, to have better gains, to do better in the economy if they find jobs. So to give them more opportunities, that's going to give them better chances as they work to contribute more significantly. Secondly, for people who are obtaining the Canada Workers Benefit, it'll be excellent if they can have it automatically, because that will also create more opportunities for economic growth, because there will be more people working. With regard to families, we know that the Canada Child Benefit is extremely important. It's more money for families and more opportunities for women to work, for families to have more money. And this is something very significant to the economy. When families have more money, they are generally doing better, and they spend on their families, and that helps the economy too. So we're in a good place, and that is because of workers across Canada. And the Canada Child Benefit, the Canada Workers Benefit, those are two very important measures that will help us continue on this excellent track. One further question. It's important as we establish the economic framework to talk about the measures that will benefit small business, since small business really is the engine of job creation. Could you give us more details on the measures that in this budget are dedicated to small business and combined with initiatives in preceding budgets to provide a really good framework for increasing the number of jobs in both the medium and the long term. For SMEs, the most important thing is economic growth. At the outset, that's the main thing, and we're in a good position there, much better than before. Then, of course, we need the workers with measures that are in place to help families and help workers stay in work. That is really going to help SMEs. Again, for SMEs, if they're to invest in the future, they need to have low taxes, and that, again, is a measure that we consider very important. What we believe is paramount is to ensure that measures help SMEs invest. And that's what we've done with the changes we've brought to the system. This is extremely good for SMEs. With lower unemployment, there are challenges for some SMEs, and we are carrying on with these measures to help the labor force, improve training, improve education, and make sure we have the workers we need for the future.
Mr. Poilievre, 5 minutes.
Minister, you're here today to discuss this bill. 200 pages of it, or almost half of it, deal with a federal carbon tax that you seek permission to impose in provinces that do not have their own. When that federal carbon tax is imposed and fully implemented, how much will it cost the average Canadian family?
Well, what's important to know is that we have put forth a backstop. We've actually said that what we want is, as you know, a pan-Canadian approach to carbon pricing that allows each province to take their own approach to putting that measure in place. And of course, up to now, we've not yet heard from each province exactly the way they're going to move forward. They have until September 2018 to do that. So I imagine that if you were to talk to the provinces right now, they're going through analysis on how they can create the best economic outcomes.
Sir, Minister, we're short on time. I'm asking strictly about the federal carbon tax that you seek permission to impose through this bill. So once again, how much will your federal carbon tax cost the average family when fully implemented?
Well, to be clear, our approach is to price carbon.
How much will it cost, though?
Poilievre, the minister has the floor.
Our approach is to price carbon so we can actually improve our economy over the long term. And of course, we have examples to show how this can work. If you look in British Columbia, which has had carbon pricing, we've seen significant economic gains. When you look in Quebec, which has had a cap-and-trade approach,
the minister's had a chance. Point of order, Mr. Chair. The minister's had his opening statement. My question was a very specific one. How much will the carbon tax cost the average family?
And the minister is responding to your answer. So I believe the minister is done. The question's yours.
How much will your federal carbon tax cost the average Canadian family when it's fully implemented?
I think, as you know, our approach around the pricing of carbon is to make it revenue neutral. So we are looking towards the provinces to determine the approach that they're going to take, and that, in our estimation, will be revenue neutral from a federal government standpoint.
How much will it cost? So this bill seeks to allow you, as a federal government, to impose a carbon tax in provinces that don't have their own. So in those provinces, how much will that carbon tax that you wish to impose cost the average Canadian family?
So perhaps there's a language issue. Revenue neutral, that actually means exactly what it says. So when the provinces,
how much does it mean?
When the provinces choose their approach, from a federal government standpoint, we are saying that it's revenue neutral. They will choose their approach, and at that time, they will determine themselves how they can actually put that revenue to work in the provincial method that they've chosen.
Yes, I understand that. But where provinces don't have their own carbon tax, this bill would empower you to impose one. and your officials have admitted it will raise gas prices by 11 cents a litre, home heating prices by over $200 on average. How much will it cost the average Canadian household to pay your proposed federal carbon tax? How much?
Well, actually, Mr. Poilievre, our view is that it would cost significantly more for Canadians over the long run, for Canadians in their households, for Canadian businesses, if we don't take an appropriate approach to carbon pricing. I will tell you that I've been
How
meeting...
can you be sure of that if you don't even know or won't even say how much it will cost Canadian households to pay this tax? How much will it cost the average family?
I will tell you that
going
I've
to
been
be
meeting with
respectful
Canadian
here, guys.
businesses who are trying to think about how they can appropriately talk about the risks over the long term about climate change and the costs that those will impose on their businesses and on Canadians writ large. In our view, this is actually the approach to make sure that we have a strong economy, which means we will actually be deferring potential costs for Canadians over the long term. We will move forward with this approach, which we think is economically positive, which will help not only businesses but Canadians over the long run.
So will it cost more than $3,000 for the average household?
Well, perhaps again, you're not fully hearing what I'm saying. The Canadian approach is a pan-Canadian approach, so the provinces are going
Perhaps
to be
you're
choosing
not
their
hearing
own
the
approach.
question. The question is how much will it cost the average family?
The minister has the floor.
And the approach from the federal government as a backstop will be revenue neutral.
How much will it cost?
Mr. Minister, you're saying it's revenue
As
neutral.
I've said, it will be revenue neutral.
But that means the average family won't pay
Mr.
anything.
Poilievre, your time's up. Mr. Dussault.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Merci, Monsieur le Ministre, pour...
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here, Minister. My first question is regarding what you announced in your statement and in your speech in the House. I believe that you announced pay equity legislation. You referred once again to the pay differential between men and women in Canada. Everyone expected to see something in C-74 that we're looking at today, something on pay equity, but in this 500-page bill, there's nothing on pay equity. Can you tell us why you decided once again to postpone implementing pay equity legislation?
Donc, comme vous savez,
As you know, we have a first and a second bill to implement the measures in the budget. In the second Budget Implementation Act, we will have pay equity provisions, tax equity measures, and we consider it important. That's why it was in the budget. That's why it will be in the legislation this year. It'll be there. Thank you for that commitment. It's good to hear that it'll be in the next Budget Implementation Act, because a lot of people were extremely disappointed it wasn't in this one, given how important you said you considered it. That makes it all the more important it being the next one. I have another question with reference to a study we're doing in our committee on money laundering and the proceeds of crime. In Canada, we're hearing the word snow washing more and more. We even hear that word at international meetings like the G20, where we are pretty much the last in the world to have information on corporations, the data that we need. I'd like to hear your views on a public national registry of owner beneficiaries of Canadian corporations, something that would guide our work. This is indeed an important issue. It's very important for the government to have a tax system that works, both here in Canada and for corporations and individuals that do things offshore, conduct business offshore. It's very important. We are working and have worked with the provinces to talk about beneficial ownership. It is an extremely important issue. I believe you know already that over 90% of Canadian corporations are provincially registered. So we need to work with the provinces in order to come up with a workable and working solution. Each time that I have met with finance ministers, my provincial counterparts, we have talked about beneficial ownership and how we can deal with it. We have found an approach and now have some agreement on improving the way things are. We are going to continue with that work. There are also additional measures to ensure that our system works not only here in Canada, but also for corporations to have some certainty that they are within the law when dealing with offshore tax. On another issue, very quickly, our committee has received a great number of communications about medical cannabis and sales tax on medical cannabis, as well as with excise taxes on medical cannabis. What is your view and what is your response to all the Canadians who've written in asking us not to put an excise tax or a sales tax on medical cannabis? We believe that we need a tax system for cannabis that helps our plan to work, our system to work. Children, we need to be sure that children don't have access and that criminals can't get into the market. So we know that there are instances, or there will be in the future perhaps, where there will be a prescription by a physician for someone to obtain cannabis, and when the cannabis has a DIN, a drug identification number, it will be correctly and properly taxed, and it will be identified as medical cannabis and be set apart from recreational cannabis. There will be a system that will help people who need cannabis for medical reasons, and that will work for the rest of Canada.
And, thank you to the Minister for joining us once again. My staff shared a document with me this morning that made me quite happy. It's the GDP report from Stats Canada, and it showed that there was an increase in every province and territory since for the year 2017, and that's the best since 2011, and which is really, really exciting to see. And it was really good to see that Alberta had increased by 4.9%, which was the information that was better, though, was the territories, the Northwest Territories increased by 5.2%, and Nunavut by 13%. So things for us are moving in the right direction. I think we're doing a lot of things that are helping us move forward. I didn't expect that. I had all, and I raised it with you several times. I expected that we needed to see the land claims and self-government issues resolved before we were going to see the economy grow. We also needed to see more transportation infrastructure in the north in order to attract industry to come to the north, where it's very expensive to explore, very expensive to do business. Well, since our government has come into power, we've got 10 sets of negotiations, 10 sets of discussions with Indigenous governments going on at this point. And we didn't have any going on 3 years ago, which is really positive. But on the infrastructure side, we're playing catch-up. We have a huge deficit, whether it's municipal or transportation or any part of infrastructure, we need investment. And we have a number of things that are causing us some concern. The main one is the cost-sharing component of our investment from the federal government and the requirement for the municipality or the territorial government, in our case, the government of Northwest Territories, to put in a share, which is fine, except we are starting to hit our limit, our borrowing limit. Now, I'm not sure if that's the case with the provinces. Is there a difference between the provinces and the territories when it comes to borrowing limits?
Sure. Well, first, let me say that I started out my day this morning with a meeting with the 3 premiers from the territories, and it feels like I'm ending my day with a similar line of questioning. So it's of course really important that we think about the different challenges that face different parts of the country. Starting with the good news, of course, that we are experiencing strong growth in the 3 territories, that all 3 territories have a solid budgetary situation. Obviously, in each case, they have significant revenue that comes through the federal government. But we also realize that there's always more that can be done. And infrastructure, as was pointed out to me by the three premiers, is a particular challenge. And yes, their borrowing situation is obviously different than other places in the country. I don't believe they issue their own bonds, do they? Do they issue their own bonds?
I think they do.
They do?
I think they do.
Yeah, the capacity, though, for borrowing is clearly less given the size of the economies. So we did hear that request from the premiers this morning, the request to have different potential cost sharing on infrastructure. It's always important that we look at how the programs that we put in place impact different parts of the country, because they do have a different impact. So I don't have any conclusions for you right now, but I know that that is a point that has been brought up. I know that it's a point that was brought up later in the day as well with our infrastructure minister, Sohi, and it's one that he's working to understand the implications of the current approach on the ability for the territories to actually make good use of the money. What I heard from the premiers was that there's, at least in a couple cases, a concern that they might not be able to fully utilize the infrastructure opportunity because of the cost sharing required. So that's something we need to understand more and are working to do so.
Sorry, Michael, a long question and a long answer. Mr. Polyev.
Back to the roughly 200 pages in your budget bill that are dedicated to the federal carbon tax that you will impose in provinces that don't have their own. Will that federal carbon tax cost more than $500 for the average Canadian household?
So, again, I want to step back to methodology here. So what we're aiming to do is to have a pan-Canadian approach to the pricing of carbon. We know that over the long term, this is positive for our economy. We're seeing climate events that are obviously causing enormous
Will it cost more than $500, though?
Well,
just out of curiosity, that was really the question.
In coming to an evaluation of something, you do need to consider what the issue is that you're trying to solve for.
Will it cost more than $1,000 for a household? An average household?
Mr. Polyev, you can't ask the same question 20 times.
That was a different question.
Well, it's pretty close to
We're
the
trying to
previous
solve
one.
for ensuring that we have long-term economic growth in this country that's not hampered because of environmental challenges, including climate change. We know that this approach is the way to do that. We're seeing businesses follow along and recognize that this is critically important. What we will say is that the approach taken in different provinces will have different long-term positive impacts based on what they do.
So the question was whether it would cost more than $500. You didn't answer, so I asked then if it will cost more than $1,000 for the average household. Will it cost more than... You didn't answer that either. Will it cost more than $1,500 for the average Canadian household to pay this federal carbon tax when it's fully implemented?
I think the challenge that you're facing is you're asking the wrong question. What you're asking should be, what are the advantages towards the pricing of carbon over the long term? It's a better environment. It's a situation where we'll have fewer climate change events. It's a situation where businesses will make investments that are going to grow our economy over the long term.
Excuse me, Minister.
That's what we're trying to achieve.
You just told me that that is the wrong question. For people who are struggling to pay their bills, for people living in Vancouver that are paying $1.60 a litre for gas right now, it is exactly the right question. And I have literally never seen a finance minister come before a committee asking for the power to impose a tax without indicating what that tax would cost. So, will this tax cost more than $2,000 for the average Canadian household?
You're ignoring the fact that we're passing the money back, that it's a revenue neutral issue. The decision will be taken by the provinces. And what you are doing by focusing on British Columbia, of course, is ignoring the fact that this approach, this carbon pricing approach, has been in place for about a decade. And in fact, during that decade, household growth has been significant in terms of incomes in British Columbia, as has over economic success.
So you're going to impose this tax. Will it cost more than $2,000 for the average household?
Sorry, again, what we're saying is that we're looking for provinces to come up with an approach to pricing carbon that will help the environment over the long term. And should they not get to an approach, that we'll have a backstop approach that will be revenue neutral.
That means free?
What we're saying is the federal government role is that they will have a choice of how to do that, and we'll be able to do it in a revenue-neutral approach.
The federal government is going to collect the tax.
You'll have to talk to the provincial
Excuse me. You said that the federal government
would answer.
You said the federal government would collect the tax in provinces that don't have their own carbon tax. You now use this word revenue neutral. I asked if that meant it would be free for Canadian households when their gas bill goes up, when their heating bill goes up, when their grocery bill goes up. Is that all going to be free?
I think from the federal government standpoint, what I'm trying to explain is that there will be no net increase in tax.
Will you collect GST on the carbon tax?
I think what you're going to have to do is wait until September when the provinces give us the direction in terms of what they're each going to achieve.
So you want us to pass this bill to give you the power to impose the tax now, and then after the bill is passed, we get to find out what it means to our constituents. That's what you're asking us to do.
We'll already tell you that it's a revenue-neutral approach.
And I just asked you if that meant free, and you still won't answer that question. So again, back to another question. Will you charge GST on this tax?
That's your last question, Minister. Go ahead.
Well, what we will do is we will not leave aside the responsibility to deal with our environment over the long term. We will not leave aside the opportunity for us to be leaders in the planet in clean technology. We will not leave aside the climate risks and challenges to the next generation of Canadians. So what we've decided to do is move forward in a way that is achieving a broad consensus. We're seeing that businesses are coming on board. In fact, they're asking how they can represent those risks actually in their own financial disclosures. So we know that over the long term, this is going to be positive for our economy, and we look forward to being a leader in the world in this front.
Ms. O'Connell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Minister, for being here. I want to start out by asking questions about Canada's competitiveness and the ability to attract foreign investment, and specifically around, I've spoken about this at this committee and to yourself as well, around the focus certainly internationally and definitely in Europe. They're leading the way when it comes to climate-related financing. And so I was really happy to see the announcement with the expert panel on climate financing being announced as the first step. And then I was also happy to see that my home province in Ontario have actually moved forward to have climate risk investment disclosures. So I guess my question is in and around, it's somewhat twofold, but one, how you're working with other provinces and territories and with the expert panel on how to determine some of these climate policies around finance, and secondly, how that then makes us more competitive to compete, especially when we know other countries are somewhat ahead or really moving along in this regard.
Well, we know that in the market, publicly traded companies need to present risks to their investors. And so risks that are clearly identified in the short term, they have a responsibility to represent in their statements to investors. So if you look at the statements that would come out, for example, from property and casualty insurers, you would see that they're ahead on this game. They recognize that climate-related risks are significant challenges. Environmental issues are front of mind for them. What we're finding is that globally people are recognizing that long-term environment risks around increasing carbon pollution are a problem that should be represented as a long-term risk for many businesses. So I will tell you that businesses are getting together to think about how they can represent those longer-term risks, how those can be presented to investors so they can think about what the appropriate decisions they can take for their investment. And what that will do is, of course, enable businesses that take appropriate approaches to get lower cost of capital, because they will see a greater influx of people interested in investing in their business or their opportunities. So we're starting to see that work together. We've seen not only institutional investors and pension funds coming to the table worrying about their long-term investments and the environmental risks, but also large firms, both those that emit a large amount of carbon and those that don't, because they want to think about, in the case where they emit a lot of carbon, how they can become more efficient, and those that don't, they want to represent the fact that they see themselves in an advantageous position. So we think working together to make this more clear to investors is critically important, and will lend to the right kind of behaviors for investment, both in firms, by the way, that are in the resource sector and that aren't. Because what I find is, in those discussions, firms in the resource sector are looking for ways that they can responsibly address the long-term challenges that are presented to their business and therefore their investors.
Thank you. And following up on that, one of the strongest policies to move forward on climate change is pricing pollution. And certainly this has been something that many countries around the world are moving towards. 85% of Canada's population already lives in a regime with pricing pollution. So I guess my question in another way is, what's the cost if we do nothing? I know there are reports about insurance claims going up. I was in municipal politics, I've mentioned that many times. The cost to municipalities to prepare for climate change and adaptation is enormous, all on the backs of property taxpayers. We don't build storm sewers for 100-year storms anymore. We build them now for every 5 to 10 years. So can you talk a little bit about the overall cost if we actually do nothing on climate?
Well, it seems to me that in this area we have to play a short and medium game and a long game. And the short and medium game, and the very short, obviously we're dealing with the immediate costs. So property insurers are seeing risks go up. They're seeing their claims go up. We're hearing directly from them that this is a big challenge. So that is an immediate issue. They're talking about how we can develop more resiliency against those those challenges. So seeking ways that we can create more ability to deal with these issues, including even in the case of the government, thinking about how we can be prepared for what will be the eventual costs that come from those challenges. In the longer term, of course, is exactly as you pointed out. It's around carbon pricing so that we can be part of a global consensus on how we can move forward to deal with this issue. And it's obviously not easy, as we see, and even getting coalitions to do this is fraught with challenges, because different countries, as well as even within countries like ours, have different footprints. But it seems to us that we're making progress. It seems to us that in Canada we've made great progress. You mentioned 85%. It's really about capturing the rest of the population, ensuring that we have an approach that deals with this in a way that can be manageable for individuals and business, and create the economic advantage over the long term that we're seeking to have.
Thank you both. I have Mr. Polyev, Mr. Sabara, and hopefully got time for one question from Mr. Dussault. Mr. Polyev.
The Minister refused to answer the cost of the carbon tax to the average Canadian household. Mr. Rochon, thank you for being here today. You received a memo on October the 20th, 2015, which provided some costing for various carbon tax options. The memo reads, and I quote, This memo focuses on the potential impact of a carbon price on households' consumption expenditures across the income distribution. Key findings are blacked out in the version that I received. Clearly, the blacked out area is a table which shows how much people would pay in taxes depending on their incomes. How much would a family that earns, say, $40,000 a year pay under a new carbon tax?
Well, I think the ultimate outcome is entirely dependent upon the design of the tax and the rebate that is provided to households from the proceeds of the tax.
But
so it's quite design specific.
So on this, but in this document, how much is a family, say, earning $40,000 pay in a carbon tax?
Well, as you know, we receive requests for access to information, and there is a piece of legislation, the Access to Information Act, and we apply the rules of the Access to Information Act when we get those requests, and we've treated that document consistent with those rules.
Right, and your department is under investigation right now by the Information Commissioner as a result.
That's correct.
But there's nothing in the Act that prevents you from volunteering the information. So can you please tell us what a family earning, say, $40,000 a year would pay under the new proposed carbon tax?
Actually, I think if you look at the Act and the Security of Information Act, they're quite clear that we are to release information under certain circumstances and not under others.
You mentioned security. You're suggesting that would somehow harm the government's security if
I'm just
people
saying
knew what the tax was going to cost them?
We administer the Act according to the legislation of Canada. Of course, if Parliament wants to change the legislation, that's always within the prerogative of Parliament. All right.
So we have here blacked out documents on the cost of the carbon tax. We have a public servant who I believe is being prevented from sharing information that is in the public interest to share. We have a minister who, under about a dozen questions, refuses to answer basic questions about what this tax will cost. This looks like a cover-up, the carbon tax cover-up. And after receiving a dozen questions from me, you want to answer, Minister, maybe you'll answer Mr. Albus's questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Poilievre. Minister, this past Monday we had a veterans advocacy group here before us who said that in this BIA, under your proposed Veterans Pension for Life, and I quote, this is what he said, "The difference in payout based on gender, this government willfully and woefully implemented a human rights violation." Now, we already know the government is implementing what has been called a sexist carbon tax on female Canadians. Why is your government including a similarly troubling pension payout for veterans founded on gender discrimination? And again, it's based on monthly payouts versus a total lump sum. A female who's injured, fighting for this country, versus a male who is in the same kind of damage would receive a different monthly amount. Minister, why is it seem that you've created this situation?
Perhaps I can go through what, in fact, we've outlined. So we outlined on December 20th our Pension for Life plan, and proposes 3 new benefits to provide recognition, income support, and stability to Canada's veterans who experience a service-related injury or illness. One is pain and suffering compensation. It's a monthly tax-free benefit for life of up to $1,150 for ill and injured veterans. The second is additional pain and suffering compensation. Again, it's a monthly tax-free benefit for life of up to $1,500 for veterans whose injuries greatly impact their quality of life. And finally, there's an income replacement benefit, a monthly income replacement at 90% of a veteran's pre-release salary. So I'm
Minister,
anxious to understand your context.
Well, the context was exactly what I said, that if someone is injured, that they receive a different payout. Minister, did your government perform a gender-based analysis on this pension for life for veterans?
We've performed a gender-based analysis on all the measures in our budget.
Can you assure Canadians that a female, and again, we have a mission potentially in Mali coming up, that if a female Canadian Armed Forces member is injured, the same as any male in similar circumstances, will she receive the same benefit on a monthly basis for your pension for life?
I can assure you that this approach is gender neutral, and that the situation of the the outcome is about the individual situation.
Are you
not about
suggesting the gentleman that came to us is misrepresenting your bill?
We're well over Mr. Elvis.
I would say,
Mr.
Mr. Chair, that I can't comment on somebody who I have not had the opportunity to talk to.
I hope that you would direct your officials to give this committee that information.
And I believe the committee has asked the witnesses who were veterans here to come back and respond to that example, have we not? I think I wasn't here that day, but I think we did. If we didn't, we will.
I would say, Mr. Chair, that we would be pleased to understand the situation suggested to ensure, as we always want to, that we have considered all the situations that we want to consider.
Okay. Express concern, Mr. Chair, because you did question the same witness. So I really do hope that the minister will present that information.
We'll
including
try and clear that up.
Gender-based analysis and the actual numbers.
Thank you. Mr. Sabera.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome, Minister. Minister, I mentioned this to the Minister of National Revenue that came before us just a little while ago, in terms of a way of saying congrats. Yesterday afternoon, A.T. Kearney came out with their 2018 Direct Investment Confidence Index. Canada moved up 3 spots, and if I could read the quote without getting to the full report, which I had a chance to look at earlier, Canada moves up 3 spots to its highest ranking in the history of the index. An update to the Investment Canada Act, a newly established Invest Canada agency, and new trade agreements could be boosting investor optimism. And we now rank number 2 in the world, slightly behind the United States, but in front of many of our trading partners from Germany, UK, China, Italy, Switzerland. And we were only one of 3 countries to move up 3 spots, the other 2 being Switzerland and Italy, all in the top 10. I wish to say congrats. I think it's sometimes you need to do a victory lap once in a while and say we are going the right way in terms of attracting investment here in Canada, and it's showing in a number of the announcements we've been doing recently. But our work remains undone and continues. And in the BIA legislation, we have a number of things that addresses labor participation rates. And I wanted to hear your comments on, frankly, the Canada Workers Benefit in terms of getting people into the labor force, keeping people in the labor force. Say if you're ready for retirement and may want to work, you get a little boost there. And in attracting underrepresented groups and increasing that labor force participation rate for women.
Well, thank you. I guess to address the first part of your comment question, we're obviously pleased with where the economy is today. We do believe that Canada is competitive. We had an 8% increase in business investment in 2017. We do, however, know that there's always more work to be done. We recognize that the changes in the global environment, the NAFTA discussions, the changes in U.S. tax rates require us to ensure that we think about how we can continue on our positive track around competitiveness for the long term. We do, though, see competitiveness as much more than trade. And that's very important, much more than taxes, although that's very important. And we do see it as having a very successful and resilient labor force. So in answering your question directly, we know that in an era where we've now gotten to the lowest unemployment we've seen in 40 years, that we need to think about how we get and keep people in the workforce. So the Canada Workers Benefit is an important factor in that goal. The funding of the LMDAs and the provinces is also critically important to make sure that we deal with people that go through the opportunity to find new jobs in different fields. So, the way to think about this is as good as the economy is now, and we think about it in terms of the number of Canadians working, there's always more work to be done. Canada Workers Benefit is an important step in that trajectory, but we'll need to consider what the next steps are in keeping that going.
I'm going to move to Mr. Poilievre for one quick question, and then we'll have to adjourn. One quick question, Pierre. Yes.
You're not Monsieur Poilievre.
I'm sorry, Mr. Dussault. Sorry.
J'aime mieux pas commenter.
No comment. My question will be very brief, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to know from the Minister whether, in his view, a monthly subscription to Netflix, in his opinion, is that a product or a service? The important thing, in our view, is this. We know that the economy shifts continually, and with companies like Netflix, there are changes in ways that services are being delivered. It's like the other digital giants. That is why that we are looking at the sector as a whole. Well, you did say services. Yes, we looked at each company individually, but what we're trying to do is ensure that our system works over the long term. And that means we have to consider how the system will be managed in the future. That's why we're working with our counterparts internationally, with the OECD. I have confidence in the fact that we can find a way of working with the digital companies and coming up with a tax system that works.
There, unless you've got one quick comment to leave on, Mr. Murnau.
Je voudrais dire merci. Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to be here, and look forward to being here the next time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister, Mr. Deputy. Meeting adjourned.